The 3rd of March 1943. Bismarck Sea, north of New Guinea. 7:15 in the morning. The Japanese convoy cuts through the tropical waters in perfect formation. 8 troop transports, 4 escort destroyers, 22,000 soldiers aboard, destined to reinforce the garrisons in Leh. On the deck of the flagship, Rear Admiral Masatomi Kimura observes the sky through Zeiss binoculars. Blue sky, no clouds, unlimited visibility, perfect for spotting American bombers in time. Admiral, his operations officer reports, air observers confirm. American B-25 bombers approaching from the northwest, altitude of 3,000 meters. Standard medium bombing formation. Kimura lowers the binoculars, a confident smile on his lips. B-25, Mitchell. Medium bombers. They need to fly high to hit their targets, but from altitude, our ships can maneuver. Half the bombs will fall into the sea. The anti-aircraft guns will take care of the rest. He walks over to the map in the control room. Those Americans are predictable. High-altitude bombing. Always the same tactic. Always the same mediocre results. Stay the course. Full speed ahead. We'll be in Leh before nightfall. Around him, Japanese officers shared the confidence. They had faced B-class ships 25 before. Respectable bombers. Yes, but limited. Bombs falling from 3,000 meters rarely hit moving targets at sea. The sound of the Wright Cyclone engines draws closer. Deep, distant, familiar, but then something changes. Bombers don't climb. They descend, aggressively, diving straight to sea level. "Admiral!" an observer shouts, his voice breaking. "They're coming down. 25 meters high. And, my God, the noses. The noses are covered in cannons." Kimura runs to the outer deck. He grabs the binoculars. What he sees freezes his blood. 12 B-25 Mitchells roaring less than 30 meters from the water. But these aren't normal B-25s. The glass noses have been replaced with solid metal ones. And emerging from these noses, like fangs of mechanical demons, are pipes. Lots of pipes. 4. 50 caliber machine guns in the nose. 2 on each side of the fuselage. 4 20mm cannons. More machine guns in the wings. 14 guns firing forward. On each plane. "Impossible," Kimura whispers. This is. The first B-25 opens fire from 800 meters away. The cadence is apocalyptic. 140 shots per second from a single plane. 12 planes, attacking simultaneously. 1,680 projectiles per second tearing through the air, the water, the metal. The sound isn't of a machine gun. It's of a giant chainsaw cutting through steel. The destroyer Shirayuki disappears in a cloud of explosions as incendiary and explosive projectiles pierce its paper-thin hull. Boilers explode. Ammunition detonates. In 43 seconds, the ship is split in two, sinking. What Admiral Kimura didn't know was that those planes were the creation of one man, Paul Irvin Gunn, Pappy Gunn, a former civilian pilot, family man, self-taught mechanic whom the Army Air Force considered too old at 42. But Pappy Gunn had just transformed medium bombers into flying machine guns, and the Bismarck Sea was about to become a Japanese graveyard. Brisbane, Australia, October 1942. The problem in Captain Paul Gunn's makeshift workshop was brutally simple. The B-25 Mitchell bombers that the 5th Air Force had in the Southwest Pacific were inadequate for the war they needed to fight. Standard specifications for the B-25C included a crew of 6 men, defensive armament of 6, 50 caliber machine guns, frontal offensive armament of only 1, 30 caliber machine gun in the glass nose, a bomb load of 1,360 kilograms, and a primary bombing tactic of medium altitude, 2,500 to 3,500 meters. General George Kenney, commander of the 5th Air Force, had summoned Gunn personally. "Pappy," Kenney said, using the nickname everyone knew, "I need you to solve a problem. Our B-25 seconds are excellent medium bombers over land. But at sea, against maneuvering ships, they're useless. High-altitude bombing means a hit rate of 3 to 5%. Unacceptable." Gunn, a man 6 feet tall, with gray hair and a face tanned by the Filipino sun where he had lived as a civilian pilot before the war, studied the specifications. "General, high-altitude bombing against moving targets is a waste of bombs and men. But if we descend, as we descend we become vulnerable to anti-aircraft fire. Not if we descend so low and so fast that they can't react. And not if we have frontal firepower to suppress the anti-aircraft guns before they fire on us." Kenney leaned forward. "Continue." Gunn picked up a pencil and began to sketch. "Attack at sea level, 15 to 30 meters altitude. Maximum speed, 450 kilometers per hour. Approach so fast that naval gunners don't have time to adjust their sights. But for this to work, we need to transform the B-25 from a bomber into a machine gunner. Heavy machine guns in the nose. Many. All firing forward. How many? 8. Maybe 10. Possibly 12 if we can manage weight and recoil." Kenney whistled softly. "You want to transform medium bombers into giant fighter jets." "No, sir. I want to turn them into flying machine guns. Fighter jets kill other planes. This will kill ships." Approval was granted, but the problems were immense. The first problem was the structure. The glass nose of the original B-25 was designed for a seated bomber operating Norden bomb sight. Replacing it with a solid metal nose changed the weight distribution, center of gravity, and aerodynamics. The second problem was recoil. 8 50 caliber Browning M, 2 machine guns firing, simultaneously produced a combined recoil of approximately 2,400 pounds force. This could literally tear apart an unreinforced fuselage. The third problem was ammunition. Each Browning machine gun had a capacity of 400 rounds. 8 machine guns meant 3,250 caliber cartridges. The ammunition alone weighed approximately 180 kilograms. The fourth problem was cooling. Machine guns overheated quickly. In a closed metal nose, without adequate airflow, weapons could jam or even cook cartridges. The fifth problem was visibility. The pilot needed to see in order to aim, but the solid nose blocked forward vision. "It's impossible," declared Major of Engineering Thomas White. "Sir, with all due respect, we can't simply stick 8 heavy machine guns in the nose of a bomber and expect it to fly." Gunn, who had taught himself aviation mechanics, who had repaired everything from biplanes to seaplanes in the Philippines, who had survived the Manila crash and escaped to Australia out of sheer stubbornness, replied calmly, "Major, it may not be possible according to the regulations, but it is possible according to physics. We just need to be smarter than the engineers who designed it." For 3 weeks, Gunn and his team of mechanics worked 20 hours a day. The first modified B-25, nicknamed Flying Torch, emerged from the workshop in November of '42. The modifications included removing the glass nose and replacing it with a solid metal nose made of aluminum sheets. 4. 50 caliber Browning M, 2 machine guns installed in the nose in a configuration of 2 upper and 2 lower, 2 additional machine guns on side fuselage mounts, structural reinforcements welded at stress points, an improvised targeting system where the pilot aims by aligning the entire nose of the aircraft with the target, and expanded ammunition boxes. Total frontal offensive armament consisted of 6 heavy machine guns firing forward. Combined rate of fire of 720 rounds per minute. Initial tests were problematic. On the first test flight, Pilot Lieutenant Edward Larner reported that the damn thing flew like a drunk. Center of gravity shifted forward. Nose heavy as hell. It required constant force on the control stick to keep it level. In the first firing test, all 6 machine guns fired simultaneously. The fuselage vibrated violently. 2 rivets came loose. The smell of burning metal filled the cabin. "This will fall apart in the first real attack," Major White insisted. "Doctrine is clear. Bombers bomb. Fighters shoot. We don't mix the two." But Gunn was stubborn. Additional reinforcements. Weight redistribution. Adjustments. Tests. Failures. More adjustments. No one imagined that this bizarre mix of bomber and machine gun, this hybrid that violated all doctrines of aeronautical design, was about to change the war in the Pacific. The 16th of December 1942. Rabaul, New Britain. The baptism of fire for the modified B-25 was a partial disaster that revealed both potential and problems. 6 B-25 gun specials attacked a Japanese convoy near Rabaul. The tactic was simple. Approach at sea level, climb to 50 meters for ricochet bombing, skip bombing, and strafing the convoy upon exit. Captain Kenneth McCullough, leading the formation, described how they descended 15 meters from the water at full speed. The machine guns functioned perfectly, suppressing anti-aircraft fire as planned. But when they released ricochet bombs, 3 of the 6 failed to fire. Wet fuses. And on the way out, his nose began to overheat. Smoke filled the cabin. He had to stop firing or risk a fire. The results included 1 damaged Japanese freighter, 2 B-25s damaged by anti-aircraft fire, and 1 injured crew member. The official report was lukewarm, stating that the modified B-25 concept showed promise but required significant refinement. Problems included weight distribution, weapons overheating, bomber strafing coordination, and vulnerability to low-altitude anti-aircraft fire. Conservative leaders wanted to cancel the program. "This is cowboy aviation," Colonel Roger Ramey argued. "Bombers should bomb from a safe altitude. This gun modification unnecessarily risks crews." But General Kenney saw it differently. He saw that the only cargo plane damaged was hit by a modified B-25, not by the standard bombers flying high. "Pappy," Kenney said, "you're on the right track, but I need you to go further, much further. I want you to turn those Mitchells into fire-breathing dragons, more weapons, more firepower, more terror." Gunn smiled, a dangerous kind of smile. "How much more?" "Surprise me." During January and February of '43, Gunn worked like a possessed man. His family was trapped in the Philippines under Japanese occupation. His wife, Polly, his 4 children. He didn't know if they were alive or dead. Every aircraft modification, every added weapon, every improvement was fueled by cold fury and desperate love. The second generation of modified B-25 seconds emerged in February as the B-25G Gun Special Mark II with a redesigned nose containing 4 50 caliber machine guns, a 75mm M4 cannon. Yes, a tank cannon, adapted for aircraft. 2 fixed-side machine guns, an improved cooling system, additional structural reinforcements, and a total weight of 10,900 kilograms. Then came the third generation, the definitive one. The B-25J Strafer featured 8 50 Browning M, 2 machine guns in the nose, 2 fixed side-mounted machine guns, 2 machine guns in each side blister as an option, 4 20mm cannons in wing mounts in the special version, a maximum total armament of 14 forward-firing guns, a combined rate of fire of over 2,000 rounds per minute, and a firing weight of 45 kilograms of metal per second. It was a monstrosity. It violated conventional aeronautical design. But it worked. March 2nd to 4th, 1943, Battle of the Bismarck Sea. The real revelation came at the Battle of the Bismarck Sea. The convoy, commanded by Admiral Kimura, never stood a chance. 12 B-17 strafers, modified by Gunn and escorted by P-38 fighters, attacked in coordinated waves with B-17 seconds bombing from high altitude. The tactic that Gunn and General Kenny developed was revolutionary. In Phase 1, surprise, at 7:15, B-17 seconds bombed from 3,000 meters, forcing the convoy into evasive maneuvers and breaking formation. In Phase 2, suppression, at 7:18, B-25 strafers attacked at sea level, 15 to 30 meters altitude, at a speed of 450 kilometers per hour, each aircraft opening fire at 800 meters with all 14 weapons. In Phase 3, destruction, at 7:20, after initial strafing, B-25 seconds released 250-kilogram bombs using a skip bombing technique, where the bomb bounced off the water and hit the ship's hull below the waterline. In Phase 4, annihilation, at 7:22, on the return, B-25 seconds continued strafing, targeting the deck, lifeboats, anything that moved. Lieutenant William Benn, a strafer pilot, described how he lined up with the lead destroyer. 700 meters, 6, 5, opened fire. All 8 50mm guns in the nose, plus the sides, plus the 20 millimeters. The noise was like being inside thunder. The recoil slowed us by 20 knots. Tracers were so dense they looked like solid fire hoses. The destroyer simply disintegrated. Bridge exploded. Anti-aircraft guns ripped out. Men on deck cut in half. Literally in half. The crew of the destroyer Asashio reported before sinking that American planes with demon weapons. Machine guns, raining down like iron. Impossible to return fire. All cannons destroyed before we could fire. Water all around boiling with impacts. Hull perforated 100 times. Transmission was cut off. During the 3 days of the Battle of the Bismarck Sea, Gunn's strafers achieved impossible results. 8 out of 8 transports sunk. 4 out of 4 destroyers sunk. Approximately 3,000 Japanese drowned. 50 Japanese planes shot down. Allied losses of only 2 B-25 seconds and 4 crew members. The success rate reached 95% destruction. The surviving Japanese captain Tamechi Hara would write that it wasn't a battle. It was slaughter. American planes with endless machine guns. The sound was a continuous BRRRRRRRR. Water, metal, men, everything shredded. I've never seen anything like it. I never want to see it again. Gunn had transformed naval bombardment. No more high-altitude precision strikes. Now it was brutal, low-altitude suppression followed by guaranteed destruction. After the Bismarck Sea, strafer production exploded. North American aviation began producing B-25Js with factory-installed forward weapon packages. But Gunn continued modifying, improving, and increasing lethality. April 1943. Attack on Wewak. 18 strafers attacked a Japanese airfield in Wewak, New Guinea. The result was apocalyptic. First pass with machine guns destroys parked planes, fuel trucks, ammunition depots. Second pass with cluster bombs destroys runways. Third pass with machine gun fire on anything that moves. 60 Japanese planes destroyed on the ground. Airfield unusable for 2 weeks. 0 American losses. The surviving Japanese pilot, Lieutenant Saburo Sakai, wrote, "I heard the roar of engines. I looked up. I saw Mitchell's familiar profile. I thought, bombers? We have time." Then they descended, noses spitting fire like dragons. My Zero exploded before I could land. Friends cut by bullets, fuel exploding. Hell on earth. June of 43. Attack on the Madang train. 24 strafers attacked a convoy of 6 freighters. New tactic with a coordinated attack using torpedo boats. Strafers open fire, suppressing anti-aircraft guns. While Japanese gunners are downed or dead, torpedo pilots launch torpedoes unopposed. Torpedo hit rate rises from 30% to 85%. All 6 cargo ships sunk, total attack time of only 9 minutes. September of 1943. Finchhafen Massacre. Terror now had statistical numbers. Strafers B-25, modified by Gunn and their evolutions, carried out more than 1,200 sorties between March and December of 43. They sank or damaged 237 Japanese ships. They destroyed 682 aircraft on the ground. Their own loss rate was only 4.2%. The Japanese nickname for strafers was yokai, which means demon or evil spirit. The sound became iconic and terrifying. Japanese survivors described the continuous roar of 14 guns firing simultaneously as Saw or Thunder God. An anonymous Japanese sailor wrote in a recovered diary. Day 23. Another attack by the chainsaw planes. Sound begins like a distant mosquito, then like a swarm of bees, finally like a giant chainsaw cutting through the ocean. When I hear it, I pray. When I see it, it's too late. Water boils with bullets. Metal screams. Men scream louder. Gods, make it stop. A Japanese intelligence officer wrote in a captured report that countermeasures against the modified American B-25 are inadequate. Approach at sea level prevents early detection. High speed reduces the engagement window to 3 to 5 seconds. Frontal firepower destroys anti-aircraft guns before they can respond effectively. Recommendation: avoid maritime routes within the operational range of these aircraft. There is no effective defense. The psychology of war had changed. Japanese sailors, once confident in their destroyers and guns, now lived in terror of clear skies. Commanders routed convoys along longer paths, burning precious fuel just to avoid areas where strafers operated. November of 43, Operation Cartwheel. 100 strafers participated in a coordinated campaign against Japanese positions in New Guinea and the Bismarck Islands. Not just ships now, bunkers, bridges, supply depots, troop concentrations. The tactic of low-altitude strafing followed by ricochet bombing worked against any target. A concrete bunker that would withstand normal bombing would disintegrate when attacked at ground level with 2,000 bullets followed by 500 kilograms of explosives. General Douglas MacArthur, observing the attack on Arawe, commented that these are the deadliest aircraft he has ever seen. Gunn has turned medium bombers into weapons of annihilation. If we had strafers in the 40s, the war here would have ended a year earlier. The Gunn modification represented more than just clever engineering. It represented a fundamentally different philosophy of warfare. Traditional bombing doctrine stated that altitude ensures safety. Accuracy comes from sophisticated sights. Bombers do not directly engage defensive targets, and roles are defined by where bombers bomb and fighters fight. The Gunn doctrine stated that low altitude guarantees accuracy. Precision comes from proximity. The bomber suppresses defenses before bombing, and its role is hybrid, where the bomber is also a machine gunner, suppressor, and terrorizer. General George Kenney articulated the philosophy by saying that Pappy Gunn proved that air combat roles are not fixed. A bomber with sufficient weapons becomes a heavy fighter. A heavy fighter with bombs becomes a bomber. What matters is not category, but effectiveness. And strafers are the most effective aircraft we have ever put into combat. The contrast with the Japanese mentality was revealing. Japanese naval aviation focused on paper purity. Fighters hunted. Bombers bombed. Torpedo bombers torpedoed. Extreme specialization. U.S. Army aviation in the Pacific, under Kenney and inspired by Gunn, embraced hybridization. One aircraft, multiple roles. Adaptation based on doctrine. Japanese Admiral Matomi Ugaki wrote in his diary that Americans do not respect aircraft categories. They turn bombers into machine guns. They use fighters for dive bombing. They constantly improvise. Our doctrinal rigidity costs us dearly. By the time we develop a response to one tactic, they have already switched to another. But there was a deeper dimension. Gunn wasn't a formal engineer. He didn't have a university degree. He was a practical mechanic who had learned through trial and error in the Philippines before the war. This allowed him to think outside of academic constraints. Formal engineers would say, "No way." Gunn would say, "Let's see." Colonel Paul Warfield, commander of the 345th Bombardment Group, the famous Air Apaches who flew strafers, said that Pappy gun had an advantage that no factory engineer had. He didn't know what was impossible. So he tried impossible things and found that they worked. Each strafer was a statement. Rules are guidelines, not chains. The rate of innovation was impressive. Between October 1942 and December 1944, Gunn implemented 37 different modifications to B-25. Some worked, some failed. But the rate of experimentation ensured continuous improvement. Compare this to the Japanese modification process. Centralized, bureaucratic, slow. Months to approve a change. More months to implement. Meanwhile, Gunn was making modifications in the field, testing them the following week, and implementing them en masse the following month if they worked. Modern warfare rewards adaptation over perfection. It's better to have a weapon that's 80% effective now than a weapon that's 100% effective in 2 years. Strafers were perhaps 70% of the ideal bomber in theory. But they existed. They worked. They killed. And in the end, that was all that mattered. The 3rd of March 1945, exactly 2 years after the Battle of the Bismarck Sea, Rear Admiral Masatomi Kimura, who had survived that battle, was now in Tokyo, giving testimony to the Naval Losses Investigation Committee. "Admiral Kimura?" the interrogator asked. "At the beginning of 43, you described the American B-25 as predictable and ineffective. Do you still hold that assessment?" Kimura, now 52 years old but looking 70, replied in a tired voice, saying that those weren't 25s. They were monsters, nightmare creations. One man, this Gunn, had changed the balance of power in the Southwest Pacific, not with superior technology, with brutal creativity. Explain, he turned weakness into strength. The B-25 couldn't bomb accurately from altitude, so he made them attack from the ground. The B-25 was vulnerable to fighters, so he gave them enough machine guns to kill fighters. The B-25 was a limited medium bomber, so he turned it into a weapon that had no category. It wasn't a bomber. It wasn't a fighter. It was something else. Kimura paused, lighting a cigarette with trembling hands. "Do you know how many ships under my command were sunk by gun strafers? 18. Do you know how many fighter planes I escorted were strafed on the ground? 123. Do you know how many times I had nightmares about that sound? Every night, for 2 years. Brisbane, Australia, the 16th of January, 1945. Paul Pappy Gunn received news that would change his war. Her family, imprisoned in the Philippines for 3 years, was free. American forces liberated Manila. Polly was alive. All 4 children were alive. When the messenger delivered the telegram, Gunn read it silently. Tears streamed down his weathered face. He wasn't a man to show emotion. But this, General Kenny found him in the workshop hours later, still holding the telegram, surrounded by B-25s undergoing modification. "Pappy, I heard the news. Your family is safe." Gunn nodded, unable to speak. You know, Kenny continued, you turned anger and pain into a weapon. Every strafer you modified was fighting for them, and won, brought them back. Gunn finally spoke, his hoarse voice saying, General, every Japanese I killed stood between me and them. Every ship sunk was one that couldn't bomb Manila. Every plane destroyed was one that couldn't kill my family. It wasn't revenge. It was eliminating obstacles between me and those I love. Kenny placed his hand on Gunn's shoulder. Pappy, you did more than save your family. You saved thousands of families. Every convoy we sank was troops that wouldn't have killed our soldiers. Every base we destroyed was one less year of war. You shortened this damn war, maybe by years. Tokyo, August 1945. After surrender, Japanese aeronautical engineers were studying the captured Straffer B-25. Fascination was mixed with horror. Look, an engineer pointed to the nose. The welds are crude, almost amateurish. The weight distribution violates basic principles. The center of gravity is wrong. Aerodynamically, it shouldn't fly well. But it flies, another replied. And it kills. A lot. How did we let this happen? How did a self-taught mechanic beat our best engineers? Silence. Then the answer came from the oldest officer present, saying that because he wasn't trying to make the perfect airplane, he was trying to make a weapon that worked. Perfection is the enemy of good enough, and good enough, in quantity, beats perfect, which arrives late. Award Ceremony, Washington, D.C., October 1945. Paul Gunn received the Distinguished Service Cross, the second highest American military decoration. General Hap Arnold, commander of the Army Air Forces, gave a presentation stating that Captain Gunn's modifications to the B-25 Mitchell resulted in the sinking of over 300 enemy ships, the destruction of over 1,000 enemy aircraft on the ground and in the air, and the saving of countless American lives. You proved that innovation comes not only from laboratories, but from workshops. Not from theories, but from trial and error. Not from doctrine, but from determination. Gunn, uncomfortable with the attention, replied briefly, saying, Gentlemen, I only did what any father would do. I removed obstacles between myself and my family. That those obstacles were Japanese warships is a technical detail. National Museum of the United States Air Force. Wright-Patterson, AFB. Present. A preserved B-25J Strafer is on display. A plaque describes it as a modified B-25J Mitchell with a frontal weapons package. 8 50 caliber machine guns in the nose, 2 fixed side guns. Capacity for additional cannons. Paul Pappy Gunn's pioneering development transformed medium bombers into flying machine guns that dominated anti-ship warfare in the Southwest Pacific. 1,943 to 1,945. An estimated over 300 enemy ships were sunk by Gunn's modified strafers. Visitors photographed the nose, trying to imagine 14 guns firing simultaneously. Trying to imagine the sound. Trying to imagine the terror of being on the other side. On the 3rd of March, 1943, Admiral Kimura laughed, saying that B-25 Mitchells were predictable medium bombers. Always the same tactics. Always mediocre results. Hours later, his convoy lay at the bottom of the Bismarck Sea, wrecked by planes that were no longer medium bombers, but mechanical dragons spitting metal at 2,000 rounds per minute. They laughed when they saw medium bombers approaching. They stopped laughing when they saw cannon-laden noses descending to water level. They stopped laughing when 1,680 projectiles per second turned their ships into steel sieves. Paul Pappy Gunn took a limited medium bomber and turned it into a weapon that defied all categories. He didn't follow rules because he didn't know the rules. He didn't ask for permission because he didn't have time. He didn't wait for perfection because good enough was saving lives now. He transformed personal pain into lethal innovation. He transformed love for his family into hatred for those who threatened them. He transformed metal, screws, and determination into 14 gun-wielding monsters that changed warfare. Engineers said impossible. Gunn said watch. Japanese said bombers don't scare. Gunn said these do. History said ordinary men don't change wars. Gunn said hold my beer. And the Bismarck Sea, Rabaul, Wewak, Madang, and 100 other places where water and sky are tinged with red, proved that he was right. The thunder of the 14 guns spoke at a frequency that only death understood. And when it fell silent in August of 45, it had taught an eternal lesson. Innovation is born from necessity, not from the laboratory. Lethality comes from determination, not doctrine. And sometimes, a 42-year-old mechanic with a family in danger can do what armies of engineers cannot. To transform the impossible into the inevitable. The strafers roared. The sea boiled. And Pappy Gunn brought his family home, over mountains of sunken Japanese metal.